You do not join the French Foreign Legion. You disappear into it. There is a recruiting office in Paris that does not ask why you are there. There are 7 more like it scattered across France. Walk into any of them with a passport and a pulse, and nobody behind the desk needs a reason. That is not a loophole. That is the entire design. For nearly 200 years, the Legion has taken the men that other armies would not, and asked one question less than everyone expects. This is your life at every rank in the French Foreign Legion. Level 1. Everyone who walks through that door is running from something. A debt that has stopped being manageable. A warrant in a country with no interest in ever seeing you again. A war back home that has taken everything else and is coming for you next. A woman you cannot face. A father whose disappointment has become a physical weight you carry into every room you enter. You are not a criminal, not exactly. The Legion has a specific tolerance for men with minor trouble behind them. It assumes, correctly, that a man with something to leave behind will fight harder to belong to something new. What it does not want is the serious kind. There is a line, and everyone who works the recruiting desk knows exactly where it is, even if they never say so out loud. You could be 22 nationalities by the time you reach the front of the line. German engineers, Ukrainian soldiers between wars, British men running from something quieter than the others, Brazilians who have never left their country before this. The Legion does not care where you are from. It only cares whether you are still standing at the end of what comes next. Level 2. You hand over your passport at Fort de Nogent, on the outskirts of Paris, or at one of the regional centers scattered across the country, and something in your chest understands before your mind does. You have just given up the only proof that you are who you say you are. The days that follow have no clear shape. Medical exams, psychological interviews conducted by men who have heard every version of your story before you have finished telling it. A security debrief where someone asks, carefully, without ever quite accusing you of anything, exactly what you are leaving behind and whether it is going to follow you here. You wait in barracks limbo with men who do not share your language, eating meals in a silence that has nothing polite about it. Some of you will be sent home within days. The selection is not gentle, and it is not interested in your feelings about the outcome. You do not know yet that this is the easy part. Level 3. Somewhere in the paperwork, someone offers you something almost no other army in the world will give you. A new name. Not a nickname. Not a call sign you'll answer to on operations while your real identity sits quietly on a file somewhere. An actual, legal, declared identity. What the Legion calls service under a declared identity. A name that will appear on your contract, your pay records, your entire service history, while the name you were born with disappears into a sealed file that almost no one will ever open again. You sit with the offer longer than you expect to. The man who owes the money, he does not exist under this name. The man whose warrant is still active in a country 3,000 miles from here, he does not exist under this name. The man your father is disappointed in. For the first time since you can remember, there is a version of you that he has never met and will never have the chance to be disappointed in. You choose a name. It feels smaller than the moment deserves. Somewhere behind you, a door closes that you will not fully understand the weight of until years from now, when you try to remember exactly what it felt like to be the person you left on the other side of it. Level 4. You arrive at Castelnaudary in the south of France, at a barracks named for a captain who has been dead since 1863 and whose memory the Legion has never once stopped invoking. The first 4 weeks are called, without affection, the farm. You do not speak French. Most of the men around you do not speak French. The instructors scream at you in it anyway, and the specific terror of not understanding an order while it is being screamed at you from 6 inches away is not something anyone adequately prepares you for. You are stripped of sleep in careful, deliberate increments. You are stripped of your sense of your own competence. The things you were good at in your old life do not translate here, and nobody is interested in what you used to be capable of. You learn to fold, to march, to fire, to obey in a language that arrives in your body faster than it arrives in your understanding. 16 weeks total. The farm is only the beginning of it. You are being taken apart on purpose. The men running this process have done it to thousands of recruits before you, and they know something you do not yet know about yourself, that most people are carrying far more capacity than they have ever been asked to use, and the only way to reach it is to remove everything they thought they needed first. Level 5. Near the end of training, they walk you into the hills for 2 days with full combat equipment on your back and somewhere across 40, 50 miles of terrain that does not care whether you finish. Something in you either breaks permanently or does not break at all. This is the Marche Képi Blanc. You do not sleep properly during it. Your body runs on momentum, and whatever is underneath momentum once momentum runs out. Men beside you fall out. Not many, but some. And the ones who keep walking do not look back, because looking back is not a luxury this march is designed to allow. You finish, or you do not. If you finish, there is a ceremony that night. Torchlight, a formation, and the white kepi placed on your head for the first time, the specific white cap that has meant exactly one thing since before your grandfather was born. You are a Legionnaire now. The name on your paperwork is the only name anyone here has ever known you by. The man who existed before Castelnaudary has been marching for 2 days on legs that do not belong to him anymore. And somewhere on that route, without a specific moment you can point to, he stopped existing. Level 6. You are posted out. Maybe the 2nd Foreign Infantry Regiment. Maybe the paratroopers of the 2nd Foreign Parachute Regiment, if you were selected and if you survived the additional testing that selection requires. Maybe the cavalry. Maybe the engineers. The Legion has regiments for every specialty an army needs, and yours has already been decided by people who watched how you performed at Castelnaudary more closely than you realized. Here is the thing nobody explains to you before you arrive. The brotherhood is real, and it is stranger than anything you expected. The man in the bunk beside you was, 6 months ago, an army officer in a country his own government would arrest him for leaving. The man across from him was a farmer's son from a village with no paved roads. Neither of them can pronounce your declared name correctly yet. None of that matters in the way you assumed it would. You march at 88 steps per minute instead of the standard 120. The Legion's own pace, deliberately slower, deliberately different, a small daily reminder that you belong to something that has always done things its own way. Legio Patria Nostra. The Legion is our fatherland. You did not understand the phrase when you first heard it recited. You are starting to. Level 7. Your first deployment arrives, and it is not glamorous in the way anything about this life looked from the outside. Mali, Chad, Djibouti, Gabon, wherever France still has interests that require men willing to go where the temperature does not drop below 40 degrees and the terrain does not care about your training schedule. You are further from anyone who has ever known your real name than you have ever been in your life, and there is a specific, quiet relief in that distance that surprises you every time you notice it. The work is unglamorous in the way real soldiering usually is. Long stretches of nothing punctuated by short stretches where nothing is the only thing you wish for. You learn the particular boredom of a desert outpost and the particular alertness that has to sit underneath that boredom at all times, because the moment you let the boredom win completely is the moment something finds you unprepared. You write letters home under your new name to people who may or may not know it is you. Level 8. Somewhere in this stretch of your service, you lose someone, not a stranger. A man who slept 4 feet from you at Castelnaudary, who could not pronounce your name correctly for the first 3 months and got it right every time after that, who told you things about his old life that he has told no one else because no one else here knew him before the Legion either. The grief of this life does not come with the space other kinds of grief are given. There is a ceremony. The Legion honors its dead with a formality that borders on reverence. And then there is the next patrol, because the mission has never once paused for anyone's mourning. There is a rule almost nobody outside the Legion has heard of. If you are wounded in service to France, you can become a French citizen that same day in the hospital bed under a legal principle with a name that does not soften what it describes. French by spilled blood. You think about that phrase more than you expect to. Citizenship, purchased in the currency the country actually asked for. It is not framed as a transaction by anyone who explains it to you. It feels like one anyway, in the specific hours when you are alone with it. Level 9. 3 years in, if your record is clean and your commanders have noticed you the way you have spent 3 years hoping they would, you are eligible to apply for French citizenship through ordinary naturalization. No wound required, just time and conduct and the specific loyalty this institution has spent 3 years teaching you to feel without ever explicitly asking for it. Around this same stretch, if you have completed the leadership course, you become a caporal. You are given men to lead who are exactly where you were 3 years ago. Men with a reason to disappear, a name they have just given up, a march still ahead of them that they do not yet know if they can finish. You train them the way you were trained, not gently. You have learned, without anyone sitting you down to explain it, that gentleness is not what this institution is built to offer, and that the men who need it most are usually the ones who benefit least from receiving it. 7 years in, if you have stayed, you can test for sergeant. The exam is difficult on purpose. The men who make it are the ones who will still be here in 20 years, running training grounds at Castelnaudary for recruits who have not been born yet, teaching a version of themselves they cannot quite remember being. Level 10. 5 years end quietly. There is no parade for this part. There is a form and a conversation with an administrative officer and a decision that the Legion has watched thousands of men make before you and will watch thousands more make after. Re-engage. Sign again. Become one of the men who has been here 20 years and cannot fully picture a version of himself that exists outside these regiments. A man for whom Legio Patria Nostra stopped being a phrase on a wall a long time ago and became the literal, uncomfortable truth of his life. Or leave. Walk out with a French passport, possibly a new nationality entirely, and a name on your legal documents that the person who knew you before Fort de Nogent would not recognize if they were standing directly in front of you. The question underneath the paperwork is the only one that actually matters. Who do you go back to being, if there is anyone left to go back to? The debt you left behind might still exist. The warrant might still be active. The father might still be disappointed in a man who no longer technically shares a name with the son he remembers. You signed away an identity at Fort de Nogent because it was easier to leave than to fix. 5 years later, the question is not whether you can go back. It is whether you would still recognize the door. Every Legionnaire starts the same way, not with patriotism, with a reason to disappear and an institution old enough and strange enough to let him. The Legion has never needed you to explain yourself. It has only ever needed you to finish the march. Some men finish it and leave, carrying a new passport and an old ghost. Some men finish it and never stop finishing it, 20, 30 years, until the Legion is the only fatherland the phrase was ever actually describing. Somewhere tonight, a man is standing outside a recruiting office in Paris or Marseille or Lyon with a passport in his pocket and a reason he has not said out loud to anyone yet. He is about to hand over his name. Subscribe. Tell me which level hit hardest.